This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Justin Trudeau has announced that he will be resigning as the party leader for the Canadian Liberal Party and also as the Prime Minister of Canada. And as he said, they'll have an election and they'll do all of that fun stuff, one in spud. And it's going to be interesting going forward. It's going to probably shape, it's going to definitely shape how Canada responds to a Trump presidency, Trump 2.0, and everything else that's going to come from that. And it'll be, as I've said, with pretty much everything that I've talked about for the last 2 months, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this stuff and pay attention to it and see how it all unfolds going forward. But I think for this, it's also important that we kind of backtrack a little bit and take a look at how did we get here? Why is Justin Trudeau resigning? For Americans, by and large, we don't know a whole lot about Canadian politics and how all of that stuff works. And we know Justin Trudeau from what we see of him being all of the things that, just watch his video announcing his resignation. He looks like a pompous, smug piece of shit the whole time that he's talking. As he's announcing his resignation, he looks like a pompous piece of shit. So all we really know of him is just from what we see. On the morning show, the morning after, on Monday, we had Jason Moranchuk, who is originally from Canada and knows a bit more about Canadian politics. We had him come on and kind of talk about some of this stuff and explain it a little bit more for us, and had other conversations. So if you want, that's on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. You can find it on Facebook and Rumble as The Morning After, but if you search for The Morning After on YouTube, it will take you to 130 million other things that are not our show. But if you search for Vasectomy Clubhouse on YouTube, you will find The Morning After, and then you can go find the Monday show where we talk about more in-depth Canadian politics and what this means going forward. But for today, for this, I would like to talk about what led up to this point. How did we get here? So here's the article, and we're just going to kind of read through it, and I'll talk a little bit, but probably mostly today is just going to be reading this. Why are there calls for Justin Trudeau to resign? Explaining the Canadian PM's political woes. A decade ago, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau emerged on the international political scene triumphant after scoring his first term in power. Almost immediately, he garnered global appeal with his boyish charm, inclusive vision, and the backing of a political dynasty. Fidel Castro? Is Fidel Castro a dynasty? I don't know. Anyway, now he is the center of speculation as rumors grow that his unpopularity will lead him to announce his resignation in the coming days. So how did we end up here? In many ways, Mr. Trudeau's popularity faded as quickly as it spread. By 2021, his party had lost several seats in Parliament due to a series of controversies. The loss required him to form minority governments with Canada's left-wing New Democratic Party. But recently, his popularity reached an all-time low, backed by the departure. Wow, I'm struggling today. Lemonade, that'll make it better. backed by the departure of several key allies and cost of living pressures. So Canadian cost of living has gone just through the roof. It's been astronomical. And that has been a large part of what has made him unpopular, because in the face of growing economic pressures and things getting worse for the Canadian citizenry, Justin Trudeau has primarily focused on DEI type initiatives and bringing in more and more and more immigrants. So as it talked about, the inclusive vision that made him so popular on the global stage early on has also been a major contributor to why he's become very unpopular in Canada. In December, Mr. Trudeau's Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, abruptly resigned in the wake of a spat over the incoming Trump administration. President-elect Donald Trump said he plans to impose sweeping 25-cent tariffs on all Canadian products. Ms. Freeland and Mr. Trudeau reportedly fell out over disagreements on how to handle that. Notably, in her resignation, Ms. Freeland called a recently announced tax holiday and a plan to send $250 Canadian or $278 American checks to millions of Canadians a costly political gimmick that Canada could ill afford. Now, Chrystia Freeland was largely viewed to be the successor to Justin Trudeau. Whenever he, without the resignation, whenever he finally moved out of power, it was largely expected that she would be the one who would step into that spot. Now, that doesn't necessarily look like the case, unless in the election she gets picked or she puts herself forward for it. I'm not sure that she would do that, but again, like we said, the things to come are going to be really interesting. Our country is facing a grave challenge, Ms. Freeland wrote. That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today so we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. Now, shortly before Ms. Freeland announced her decision, House Minister Sean Fraser also quit. So, two major players in the Canadian Liberal Party have resigned leading up to this point. So that's showing not just unpopularity with the Canadian public and as a whole, but also he's become just unpopular within his own party, which continues. An attempt to rejig his cabinet then spurred new Democratic Party leader Jagmeet Singh to publicly call for Mr. Trudeau's resignation. Mr. Singh has said he will bring forward a motion of no confidence at the next sitting. The Trudeau Liberals said a lot of the right things, he wrote in an open letter, and then they let people down again and again. Justin Trudeau failed in his biggest job as Prime Minister, to work for the people. And this is something that, interestingly enough, for average kind of run-of-the-mill liberals, both in Canada and in the U.S., they're noticing that a lot of this DEI stuff, a lot of this emphasis and attention being put on immigrants, a lot of these programs and a lot of this stuff that progressivism has kind of built itself on really doesn't do anything to take care of its constituents and of the people who, they rely on to vote for them to keep them in power. How did Trudeau come to power? Well, Mr. Trudeau gained leadership of the Liberals at a dire time for the party. In 2013, the party had been out of power for more than 7 years and reduced to third place in the House of Commons for the first time. The son of former Liberal Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, sure, that's his dad, Mr. Trudeau quickly materialized as a young and charismatic politician. His leadership and message of hope, not unlike that of Barack Obama's, secured his victory in 2015. Mr. Trudeau honed a brand focused on feminism, environmentalism, and Indigenous advocacy. Asked about the gender equity of his cabinet, his pointed answer became the rally cry of supporters globally. Because it's 2015, he responded to the journalist. Mr. Trudeau's political honeymoon did not last long. That same gender equity would later be thrown off balance when two of his cabinet ministers were caught up in a 2019 corruption trial. In 2016, Canada's ethics commissioner ruled Mr. Trudeau had broken conflict of interest rules by accepting a vacation, gifts, and flights from the Aga Khan. It became the first time a Canadian prime minister had been found to have committed such a transgression. Shortly after the 2019 election campaign began, photos also emerged of Mr. Trudeau wearing blackface. For Mr. Trudeau, who had bolstered himself as a champion of multiculturalism, the photos were especially incriminating. I mean, it's a good get-up. He's playing the part. Whatever. He later apologized and said his privilege gave him a massive blind spot. Darkening your face, regardless of the context or the circumstances, is always unacceptable because of the racist history of blackface. I should have understood that then, and I never should have done it. Outside of domestic tensions, Mr. Trudeau has been at the center of a strained relationship with India due to Canada's ongoing investigation into India's role in the alleged assassination of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Mr. Trudeau said that there were credible allegations the Indian government had links to the assassination of Mr. Nijjar in Canada. In response, India has condemned Mr. Trudeau for being soft on supporters of the Khalistan movement, which it says are extremists. Trudeau fighting with Indians after he made a big part of his campaign Indians. Oh no, wait, different types of Indians. Sorry, that is insensitive of me. In August of 2023, Mr. Trudeau also announced that he would separate from his wife, Sophie Gregory Trudeau, after 18 years of marriage. So what happens now? The House of Commons is on winter break until January 27th, meaning we will not know the outcome of Mr. Singh's no confidence motion until then. Assuming the government allocates the opposition days at the end of the session, the most likely time for Mr. Trudeau to be ousted would be the last 10 days of March, which would trigger an election at some point in May. But Canadian newspaper The Globe and Mail has said Mr. Trudeau is expected to announce his resignation before a National Caucus meeting on Wednesday local time, which he did. If he does, he will be leaving his party without a leader before this year's election. The Liberals will be forced to name an interim leader to take over as prime minister while the party sets up a special leadership convention. Planning this convention could take months, and if an election is called before then, the Liberals would be at the hands of a prime minister not chosen by members. Alternatively, Canadian governments must demonstrate that they have the confidence of the House of Commons. If votes on budgets or other spending are considered confidence measures and the government loses one, it falls. In most cases, an election campaign begins immediately. So, beginning probably pretty immediately, they will start moving to elect a new leader of the party and prime minister. Yeah, which is why he recessed Parliament, so he couldn't be ousted. You get to save face and leave on your own terms by doing something like that. So it's going to be interesting going forward. But like the big takeaway from this is like Justin Trudeau fell prey to, honestly, the campaign of hope and inclusion and all of that stuff. It was very Obama-like, but his happened a little bit too late. He ends up getting caught in the middle of Trump's first term, and then COVID and the trucker strikes and everything else that's happened, and where Obama had a lot of the same shortcomings in terms of rhetoric and talk and not delivering or not really being everything that he said he would be, which, I mean, that's politics in general. His happened coming out of a recession. So like we hit rock bottom and it can only kind of get better. Whereas Trudeau comes in when things are arguably pretty good, and then things get bad, and he shows a complete ineptitude to do anything about the things that are bad. So it's interesting to see him step down. It's interesting to see the amount of backlash and hatred that he's kind of gotten from Canadians, especially considering they elected him twice. Crazy how that happens. Like, though, people will elect bad politicians that they don't like, and a lot of times it's just because of the party that they're in. Weird, right? Huh. Joe Biden. Anyway, yeah. The Liberal Party of Canada is probably going to have to face a similar self-reckoning as the Democratic Party of the U.S. And they're going to have to decide if progressivism and all of the agenda that goes with that is really a long-term solution. It was in vogue, and it was like the popular thing to do, and it was the cool, trendy thing to say and to be when things were good. But things aren't good. And you don't have time for that dumb bullshit when you're, struggling to put food on the table, and put gas in your car, and inflation is running rampant, and you've got all kinds of other problems with crime and immigrants and, everything else compiling. So watching the left struggle over the course of the last couple of years, and then watching their reaction to it over the last 6 months or so. And then we get to watch, how is it going to play out going forward? Did they learn anything? What did they do differently, if anything at all? Or do they just continue to blame, like Chuck Schumer the other day? And, Chuck Schumer said that the Democrats did a lot for the people. The people just didn't understand how much had been done for them. It's like, if people were just not so dumb and could understand how much we've done for you, they would have totally voted for us. It's like, yeah, except that, like, we see what you've done for us, and it's set us back. It's set us all back. Like, we are all worse off than we were. So here we are. I've heard from a couple Canadians that the chances are good that charges will be brought against him regarding corruption. With previous, not just allegations, but findings, and him having been found guilty of similar things in the past, that wouldn't surprise me. I think it seems like it's been pretty public over the last couple of years. Some of the trips and favors and stuff that he's taken, that, objectively you look at it and it's like, that doesn't really seem above board, but also I don't understand Canadian politics, so maybe they're cool with it. And it seems like maybe they're probably not cool with it. So yeah. As I say at the end of every episode, I am really looking forward to seeing how things kind of play out. This one, we're at least going to get to see it here over the course of the next couple weeks and next few months as the elections happen, and see what direction Canada ends up going. A lot of Europe has been undergoing similar upheavals in the wake of the failures of wokeness and progressive policy, and have been moving in a more right-wing nationalistic direction. See if something similar to that happens to Canada, or maybe Canada will just decide to sell the country to Donald Trump and become the 51st state for real, and then they can have some good old American right-wing nationalism and be proud to be Americans. There we go. All right, that'll do it for today. I will be back tomorrow. Later.